Now, people in Scotland's rural communities are rapidly getting older, and often younger people feel that they need to leave for more opportunity. That is according to research from the University of St Andrews. Now, the team looked at census data from 2011 to 2022 to see what patterns there are when it comes to Scotland's population. Dr. Rachel Wilkie led the study. I asked her to explain the findings to me.
We decided to do a study on how the ageing population of Scotland is changing over time. And one of the reasons that we decided to do the study is because there was another study that one of my co-authors had carried out a couple of years ago, which showed that there was increased segregation or increased geographical distance between generations in England and Wales. And we really wanted to see what's happening in Scotland, especially because Scotland's population is so unevenly distributed across kind of remote rural areas and cities and areas close to cities. So we thought that there was probably something quite interesting going on, but no one has done this before. And we used the census data, which the most recent year is 2022, which was quite recently released. And we also used 2011. So we looked at how the age of the population in very small areas called data zones, which approximately represent neighbourhoods of about 800 people, to show change over time in the age structure and the population.
So, Rachel, tell us then, what are the main findings? We
kind of have a few main findings, but it's kind of split by the types of urban and rural geography in Scotland. So in particular in remote rural areas and remote small towns in Scotland, especially kind of in the north and the Highlands and Islands, we saw overall population decline, so the population is getting small over time, as well as increased ageing of the population between this sort of 11-year period. And then in cities and the rural areas very close to cities, so areas that could be considered commuting zones, we found that there is quite a high age diversity in these areas, and that they're not losing population, they're gaining population over time. But there is actually some kind of increasing geographical polarisation between generations, with different people of different age groups tending to live in some different neighbourhoods close to each other, but separately. And this was not the case for all cities and all rural areas close to cities, but just in certain places.
And when we talk about the polarisation between older people and younger people, do we mean the sort of gulf in age between them? What exactly does that mean?
Yeah, so when we talk about polarisation between generations, we're thinking about the types of people that live in certain areas. So, for example, in many cities, we'll have very high numbers of students and young people, and in these areas, they might be right next to another neighbourhood which is full of middle-aged or older people, or full of families. And as the people in these two or multiple different types of areas become older or younger, we see that the trends diverge. So while one area might be getting younger, the one next to it might be getting older. So we think that the polarisation the difference between these two places is increasing over time.
And Rachel, you mentioned there are a few key findings here, but which differ between sort of the rural areas and the more urban areas. But if we look at the rural areas, do we understand sort of that decrease in population? Why is that happening?
Yeah, so our paper didn't look specifically at the reasons for this happening, but we have kind of some theories, and we're doing some additional analysis now that we hope to publish in the next year or so, which will look at kind of what are the reasons behind it. But what we think is a really important factor is migration patterns of specific to age. So particularly in these sorts of areas, there's quite often a lack of economic opportunities for young people. The cities or places close to cities are much more desirable for young people to leave, to go towards, which means that and many aren't coming back, we think. So this contributes to the less young people in the remote areas. As well, less young people living in these remote areas means that less children will be born in these areas, and that contributes to a self-reinforcing cycle. And we also we believe that there is some contribution of retirement migration of older people into these sort of desirable rural areas. But that's something, again, that we're planning to look at in more detail.
I suppose just to finish off then, what do you hope that people will take from this report? What do you hope it could go on to shape, I suppose?
So I think it's really important especially for the remote rural areas, I think it's important for the Scottish Government to take note that there is a risk of affecting the health and social care needs for Scotland. So as fewer people live in remote rural areas, there will be fewer people of working age to provide these health and social care services that an increasingly large older population will need. And this is something that it might not be having a huge effect now, but as time goes on and this sort of self-reinforcing cycle of age change over time could have a significant effect. So I think it's really important that the Scottish Government considers how ways to encourage younger people and families to live and work in these remote rural areas, thinking about providing more economic opportunities or affordable housing or other ways to kind of allow remote work or things like that to maintain the population sustainability in these areas.
That was Dr. Rachel Wilkie chatting to me a little bit earlier. She led that study. And just a note to say that we have put these findings to the Scottish Government, and we'll add that response from them to this programme as and when we get it. And we'll be talking about this in a bit more detail later on in the programme too. I'll be joined by Elle Duffy, who's just recently moved to the Isle of Rum and is now the island's Visitor Services Manager there. And we'll also be joined by Cameron Gillies, who is Head of External Affairs at Scottish Land and Estates. You're listening